Hey, what's up? Welcome to the reaction to the first reading of How to Lose a Planet. So there are the general chapter reactions that'll be just free on YouTube, and then I'm going to do reactions to each reading. For the first two chapters, they'll be free, and the rest they'll be on Patreon for some small price, and it'll just include more background stuff and maybe a storytelling tip or two. So for the first reading, something I'd noticed was I was reminded of this compliment I got from my professor, who was my advisor for my thesis, which this story ultimately became. And he said he actually doesn't like reading sci-fi. And he said the reason why is because he doesn't always have a clear picture of what's going on, what the aliens look like, what the technology looks like. And I'd had that similar experience. I'd had that similar experience in grad school, reading books that were assigned to me from other professors. And I remember having a conversation about, I don't really know what's going on in this scene. I can't clearly see it. So I worked really hard to try to do something different, like try to present. First of all, I want to have a science fiction moment in every chapter, so this whole overall story feels like it's not Earth. But second of all, I really tried to focus on creating small details that kind of popped, like I might be able to create a picture in a reader's mind. And so one tip I used was just something I learned from N.K. Jemisin in her master class, where she said, somebody outside is acting wild. Anyway, so she said, take a piece of paper and draw two circles, and then a line between those two circles. And what you have is two sides of a planet with the northern and southern hemisphere. And then like doodle some continents and things like that. And all that is just like a visual aid. And it's like, keep building on that. So for me, I would draw pictures of like what might male look like in a prison in the future, so to speak. And it's kind of doodling those ideas out and then finding a way to put it on the page with the intent or with the hope of just creating a picture that's clear and feels genuine. So that's just like my approach to just kind of like describing stuff that doesn't actually exist in the real world, only in my head. So there's that. Another thing, there's a line that stood out to me because, so I say somewhere in the first reading about how Kato's cell is no bigger than the bathroom of his childhood home. And I did that because I'm hoping that the reader has a bathroom or has been in a bathroom, know that bathrooms in general aren't very large, right? And so having that as a living space might kind of create a sensory experience. And also because bathrooms are familiar. So I kind of learned, I was kind of leveraging something, somebody is really annoying right now, leveraging something I learned in the Army. So when we were in the Army, our drill sergeant was like, how far is that tree, like down the field or whatever? And then one of us was like, 300 yards. He said, okay, how do you know that? And he said, well, it kind of looks like 3 football fields away. And he's like, yeah, so find something that's familiar and use that as a kind of measuring stick. So in the story, when I say that Kato's cell is no bigger than the bathroom of his childhood home, I'm trying to use something that's familiar, a bathroom, and use it as a measuring stick so the reader has a sense of how small Kato's cell actually is. All right, so that's, oh, wait, one more thing. So the storyline of Kato killing his grandfather. This is interesting because this is part of like the personal, psychological, emotional stuff that goes into writing a story. So yeah, I went to prison because I wasn't killed while I was in the Army, right? I've never killed anybody. So why did I give Kato the backstory of him having killed his grandfather and being traumatized by it? Partially, I'm sure I'll talk about this more later on, is because having grown up the way I did around kids who, like me, they were my age, we ate the same cereal, we watched the same cartoons, but they were also killing people. We like kickball, we played basketball in my backyard, but they were also killing people. And so what I realized, like, all right, so we have these commonalities, and I know what they're doing, and so I'm being confronted with my own capacity to be a violent person, you know? And one of the things I think I learned about growing up that way is that a lot of kids, before they really get a chance to be kids, have to decide, am I going to be like that or not? You know, like early on I decided, I don't actually like them personally. I'm not going to be that kind of person. I'm not going to kill anybody. But to do that, I had to confront my own capacity to be violent, to be a killer. And so I think having had that confrontation in my life at such a young age is why I decided to give Kato the backstory of somebody who actually was forced to do something that he didn't want to do and did end up killing his grandfather. So that's also, that felt, even though I've never killed anybody, having that tension, having that confrontation of my own capacity for violence, I think made Kato's backstory something I could mine in a way that felt true. Because at the very least, it's close enough to my own lived reality that I can actually leverage that to create a subplot that felt authentic. All right, those are my thoughts for the first reading. I will see you later. Deuces.